Good afternoon. My name is Mariano Santanacos, and today I will be presenting to you about Russia's volte-face on democracy. Now, first things first, it is safe to say that Russia has suffered a rather tumultuous past in regards to regimental power evolution. However, if we situate ourselves in a timeline, we can say that everything began with the fall of the monarchy, which means the birth of the Bolshevik Revolution and, mind the redundance, the birth of communist ideals. Now, with these communist ideals seize their power, the fall of the Soviet Union came to place, which led to the birth of Russian democracy with the Russian Federation. However, that subsequently led to the fall of these democratic ideals. Now, this is the question at hand. This is the question that this speech is going to tackle, whether these democratic ideals and these democratic values are no longer presented in that country. So if we start with the Bolshevik Revolution, we can say that communist ideals quickly established after the monarchy was exiled and assassinated, to say. These communist ideals established social rule by the cabal, by the few, really grasped power and never seized it. With the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, the supposed birth of democracy came to play in Russian territory. However, we say supposedly because we know that power never went off the few. And how are we going to prove that? With the presidential succession in point 3 of the speech. Now, the Russian Federation. How was the Russian Federation instilled, or how did the Russian Federation establish itself? The fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 contributed to the Volte-Face Accord in 1991. These accords established a series of stipulations that Russia had to follow in order to consider itself a democratic regime or a democratic country in the eyes of the whole world. However, Russia breached these accords a long time ago, but it blatantly breached these accords in 2014 with the annexation of Crimea. Crimea is a territorial expansion or territorial extension in the country of Ukraine that belongs to Ukraine. However, Russia lays a claim, a historical claim over it, and blatantly and arbitrarily annexed that piece of land to Russian country. And that was a blatant breach from the accords. Now, that is the first sign that comes to play when we're talking about tyrannical rule and how President Putin is beginning to show his true feathers, as to say. Presidential succession. I mean, we're tackling the issue as whether Russia is democratic these days, or is it not democratic anymore? And we say that Russia is not democratic anymore because ever since 1991, the Russian Federation established, the first president of Russia is Boris Yeltsin. Now, Boris Yeltsin did many things, but great things to his country, we don't know. The second president is Vladimir Putin. So, okay, we have a good presidential line of succession, which is with its second president. However, we see that its third president is Dmitry Medvedev. Now, we're talking from 1991 to 2020. The third president, Dmitry Medvedev, well, Medvedev was a prime minister to President Putin. So power, the grasp of power, is not gone off the inner circle. After Medvedev's 4 years, which is one term, Vladimir Putin came to power. Now, when Vladimir Putin for the third time, which is the third term, came to power, the Russian constitution contemplated that the presidential term was of 6 years, and you could get re-election for 2. So you can be 12 years in power. Now, came 2018, Vladimir Putin re-elected itself. July 2020, a couple of months ago, President Putin proposed a constitutional reform for him to be in power up to 2036. Now, if this is not a red flag for democracy in Russia, then I do not know what is. these constitutional amendments were presented by President Putin in a referendum, which is a public consultation to the whole country that they're going to vote whether these constitutional amendments or this constitutional reform is going to take place. Now, supposedly, the Russian country, the Russian people voted in an astoundingly favored position that they are for, that they are positive about these constitutional reform, and that they vote for them to stand. So President Putin gladly approved this constitutional reform, and now it is law in that country. So what does this mean? This constitutional reforms, or the amendments, means a series of stipulations as the accords. But the most important one is that Putin is going to stay in power in 2036. Another one is to ban same-sex marriage. And another one is about foreign policy and so forth. But what really raises red flags here about Russian democracy and Russian ideals and how the Russian Federation established itself after the fall of the Soviet Union is tyrannical rule. The lack of respect for the office of leaving and seizing power democratically. Putin is taking away that. It's taking away the power of the people to choose. Because President Putin says, I'm in power, I'm going to reform constitutionally, and I'm going to stay in power until 2036. And when 2036 comes, I'm going to see what I'm going to do to stay for another 20 years. And who says that that's going to stop him? So tyrannical rule in Russia is something that has not grasped the attention internationally, because Russia has gone to play in the news, in major news outlets, and we're hearing about Russia because of the presidential elections in the United States of America. But it is not getting the attention, the proper attention it needs, which is what's happening domestically, not internationally, not in foreign policy, but domestically. How the Russian democracy is at stake here, how Vladimir Putin, a former KGB agent from the Soviet Union, is now in power. How a person who was forged by Soviet Union ideals, by communist ideals, is now wearing a democratic mask and presenting a facade as a democratic platform, and how he is excusing his tyrannical and dictatorial behavior behind a so-called and only by name democratic office, which is president of the Russian Federation. Now, the annexation of Crimea, a Ukrainian territory, is a blatant disregard not only of the Volte-Face Accord of 1991, but all the UN peace deals and all of the international organizations that protects these imperialism. So I believe that we have to pay attention to these red flags. We have to pay attention of presidential rule, of executive power in Russia, because it is not going away. This is in a crescendo mode. This is only going to get worse. And if we don't pay attention over there, the Russian people might suffer from the decades to come. Because we know that during the Soviet Union rule, people suffered. The proletarians suffered. The middle class suffered. Only the oligarchs were the ones only the oligarchs were really taking the most part of it, because they were the ones receiving the money. So this is something definitely to ponder about. This is something that we really have to pay attention to. President Putin is not going anywhere. President Putin is grasping power more than ever. And if he ever relinquishes power, history has proved that he's going to give it to his secretary, because the next election, he's going to run for president again for the 5th and 6th time, for ends meet, for time to come. So it's something, if history has taught us something, is that it tends to repeat itself. It tends to repeat itself. So let's not repeat dictatorial rule. We are way past that. We're in the 21st century. We are way past that, and we have to show tyrannists, we have to show dictators such as President Putin that in the 21st century, this is not acceptable, and the people are going to demand for it. Thank you. That would be all. Thank you for your attention. I really hope you like this speech.